Cool. We are broadcasting live from the LDS Beta Readers Online Writers Conference. This is the inaugural event, so you can tell your grandkids you were part of the first one. I'm starting here a couple minutes early just to make sure the audio is working. There's about a 30-second delay between what I'm saying and what you're hearing. So don't be surprised if you don't get an instant response to a comment. It'll take me about 30 seconds to respond to that. Let me just go over the schedule really briefly. This morning, 8:30, I'm giving a talk on world building, and it's going to be not just applicable to sci-fi and fantasy, but to all types of writing. Then at 9, we're going to get the second half, which is really going to be focused on getting compelling tragedies in your stories, compelling low points, and it's going to help you solve that problem of a story that drags in the middle. Then at 9:30, we're going to have our organizers get on and give us a little heads up on how the conference is going to run and some of that type of stuff. There's going to be a Q&A panel with the administrators. I'm anxious to kind of hear, how LDS Beta Readers got started, what the vision is, how it's supposed to work. That should be really cool. And then we've got some chapters on building great first chapters, building characters, building compelling dialogue. So this morning's going to be chock full of stuff on helping writers to hone their craft, and then finishing off at lunch with how to set up a diverse fantasy culture. So a lot of the more details on world building are going to be covered by that. I'm going to hit it at a very high level from a book crafting perspective, the things to include there. And then we're actually going to, in the second half, looks like it's very focused on actually professional development, which I'm excited about. We're going to get on how to do good covers, writing powerful stories, critiquing, the art of show versus tell, which I'm very excited about, and then talking about how to write a marketable book. We've got story plot and structure, and then we've got some neuropsych stuff about how to make your stories more epic. We've got closing videos, and then we've got some pre-recorded videos that you can check out later as well. So it is time to start. I'm going to flip over to my presentation now. So you don't have to look at me anymore. And we are going to start with suspended disbelief, which is basically the idea of suspended disbelief is someone reading your story wants to believe in your story. And more than just creating a compelling world, it's creating a story that readers are so enthralled by that even after they read the book, they don't stop thinking about the story. We're going to talk exactly about how to do that. So the next slide here is one where we're going to, oh, sorry, let me make sure I get this present to everyone. All right, very good. Okay. I gotta get over to my other screen. There we go. All right. So we're gonna dive in and talk about stories that you guys love. Here's on the left is a list of all the stories that I just think are super duper examples of great world building. And not just that, but stories that I wanted to believe in. I wanted to literally climb through the pages of the story and live in the story. They share a lot of common elements, from rich history and backstory like we get in Middle-earth, to really strong enemies like we get in Harry Potter that create a polarizing environment that makes it a compelling story. Two of the things that we're going to focus on in particular in this talk are plausible explanation and archetypes. Archetypes a lot of times are mistaken for things like cliches, but there's a big difference there, and we're going to talk about that. So here are my 5 steps to better world building. This is kind of like getting going on a roller coaster ride. So the first step is to get people excited about the ride, or they won't stand in the line, right? Get them excited, and then you have to convince them that it's safe and get them to buckle up. And that's giving them a reason to believe, building your credibility. Then you're going to take people on an emotional journey with highs and lows and unexpected twists and turns, and then you're going to bring them back and give them that satisfied feeling. So in world building, there's these 5 sort of elements of world building that relate to the larger story. And it's that story that motivates the actual world that you're going to build. So step number 1, and this is really the most important thing that I'm going to talk about today by far. So if there's one thing you need to learn about world building, it's that your world doesn't matter. Your world doesn't matter unless I care about your main character. So the most important thing is this last line here, a self-identifiable character with whom we face the conflict. Well, what is that? When I read Harry Potter, I'm not so much reading about Harry Potter as I am Harry Potter. I'm experiencing the story firsthand, as if I'm going to Hogwarts for the first time and I'm getting a wand and I'm facing Voldemort. There's something really universal about the emotions that he's feeling that resonate with me, and that I am able to sort of, I begin to identify with Harry Potter to the point that I read the book as if I'm him. That's the main goal of character creation, and there's going to be additional information in this seminar just talking about that. That's your job. If by the end of chapter 1, I'm not in total love with your character, or I wouldn't write a blank check to them to get them out of whatever predicament they're in, you've got to rewrite chapter 1. That is the only way to create a compelling world, is to create a character that's compelling enough for me to want to experience the world with them. Fated romances and lots of these other things are very, very powerful elements to help hook your readers and give them a reason to care. A couple of books that do this really well: Shadow and Bone, Terry Harmon's book Blood Moon. It only takes a few paragraphs, if done well, 3 paragraphs, and you can have people, just 2 kids holding hands are so cute, you know, and you just know they're going to be together in the end, and you read the whole story just to prove that they will, and they're not, so then you read the sequel. Give it a try. It's definitely a powerful writing technique. All of these things here can add interesting elements, and we're going to talk about how to do that believably. So step number 2 is you've got to build your street cred with the reader. You've got to get them to buckle up and sign on for this entire book. When you write a book, you make a promise to your readers that you're going to take them on a compelling, well thought out emotional journey. And there's really like this sort of catch here where people are reading books because they want to escape from reality. But if your book is so unrealistic, especially in the way that you introduce novel plot elements, it can feel cheesy. I think you guys probably know what I'm talking about. We're all beta readers. So you'll read this novel and you'll be like 2 paragraphs in, and this fairy will just appear out of nowhere. And you're like, what is that? It's very unmotivated. It's not introduced with any sophistication. And it really just feels awkward. And you sort of wish that they had sort of motivated that a little bit better. So how do we avoid having cheesy introductions of supernatural elements or sort of off the wall elements in our books? Well, the recipe is pretty basic. And the cool part is that you don't have to have a plausible explanation for everything that happens in your book, just the first thing. It's really that simple. For me, in watching the movie Interstellar, there was this moment when they reached the wormhole and it's spherical, and my heart started racing and I almost jumped out of my chair. I was so excited. I'm a physicist, right? And I was so excited that they actually got that right. I was sold hook, line, and sinker. I was in. And it didn't matter what they did in that movie. They got one thing right. And because they had done it so right, I wasn't going to fault them for anything. And they went ahead and broke all the laws of physics after that. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because I was signed up. I was buckled on that ride. And once you get people to buckle in, then you create all these plot puzzles that keep the left side of their brain busy. And that keeps them from worrying too much about how things are happening. They're trying to get out of a predicament for your main character. I like the way Stephanie Meyer did the vampires in Twilight. Just this little interesting twist here. Oh, vampires have sparkly skin, and that's the reason they can't go out in the sun. They'd be spotted. These little clever things, these little I call it brain candy. Brain candy is one of the ways that you value what your reader knows. You go to the edge of their learning, and then you take them one step further. At that point, they trust you as being someone that's going to be able to stretch their imagination. So definitely motivate your plot elements, especially at the beginning of the story. Step number 2 of giving people an excuse to believe and trust you as a reader is to create limits and consequences. So think about the book of Moses. You have God appearing to Moses, and just a moment later, you've got Satan appearing. And so there's this contrast immediately between right and wrong. Well, you do the same thing with your plot elements. So like in Harry Potter, the magic is virtually limitless. But if you lose your wand, you're done for. So you're going to create that limit right away, which is going to have the reader on edge for any time Harry sets his wand down, anytime he misplaces it. You're just, no, don't do that. You're going to need it, right? And it just creates this amazing tension. Another good example from Top Gun: if you fly too close to the plane in front of you, you're going to catch some jet wash. You're going to flame out and flat spin, and maybe Goose is going to die. You make that very apparent as soon as possible in the beginning of the story. Star Wars, we're already aware of Darth Vader. We're already aware of the dark side before we learn anything about the Force. And in Lord of the Rings, of course, as we learn about the power of the ring, we also become familiar with Gollum, who represents what happens if you actually use or misuse the power of the ring. So you're going to show them the coin, right? And then you're going to flip it over immediately, and you're going to show them the consequences. It's the consequences and the limits that create the tension in your story. So you want to develop that early on, and it makes you a very compelling reader when you do that. Sorry, a very compelling writer. It makes your story very compelling to the readers. So here's just a couple of examples of ways that we can introduce limitations in our stories. Along the topic of genetic engineering, we love to give our characters super attributes, but we need to understand the basics of how these work in order to design really believable limitations. So genetic engineering is basically the idea that I can go in and I can delete sections of your DNA and replace it with sections that do other things, like make you green or glow in the dark or you know, age too quickly or something like that. In general, just like building a house, the blueprints are used during the construction of the house and then they're put away. You never use them again. And that's what happens to most of your DNA. It's used to build you as a person and then it's locked away. It's methylated, it's unzippable, it can't be read, can't be copied. And that's good so that you don't actually grow like an eye on your elbow when you're 45. So genetic engineering is interesting, but it's especially interesting the earlier in life that it's done. In the embryo, for children, developing children, and finally as young adults. This is great for middle grade and young adult writers who want to emphasize there's something unique about being young. On the other hand, as you think about the limitations here, if you change someone's genetic structure, they may be incompatible with the rest of humanity. They're a super soldier, but they may never have children. You can create some amazing tensions when you understand the limits of genetic engineering. Let's talk about weapons and magic. In general, you're going to give your protagonist some type of weapon or some sort of ability. Maybe it's the ability to manipulate people if it's a romance, or maybe it's that they can understand what people are feeling. They're very empathetic, whatever. You're always going to give your villains something more powerful. Think about Transformers. You got Optimus Prime, who's a truck, but Megatron and his cronies can fly. Optimus Prime has a gun, Megatron has a bigger gun. We're always going to do that to create a character that is the underdog. It helps us relate to them better. As an example, we have a gunslinger who's a deadeye, he's a great shot, but it's just with one gun. And that gun has a magazine with a limited number of bullets in it. And now all throughout that story, as a reader, I'm going to be intimately aware of exactly how many rounds are left in that magazine. And it's become a super compelling plot element. He may have PTS that affects the way he engages in certain situations. He may be afraid to shoot women. You know, so you can create these limitations very real based on backstory that take your story right out of the page and make it three-dimensional. Let's think about magic. So let's say I give my character a wand and he can cast spells. Well, let's say every time I cast a spell, the wand gets hotter, and the stronger of a spell I cast, the hotter the wand becomes, until the point I literally can't hold it in my hand or it will burn me, and I'll lose that ability to have that intimate connection with the magic. So these are examples of things we can do with our stories to make them not just more believable, but to make the plot conflict more compelling, and especially the action more compelling. So how do we find these limitations? Research, 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 especially for the things you introduced at the beginning of your book. I'm not going to go through everything here, but just know that online chat groups are probably your weakest resource. Your strongest resource are going to be professors and their grad students who are always available to talk and always like a free lunch. So definitely take them out and learn whatever you can from them. Check out Dan Cobolt's Science and Sci-Fi Fact and Fantasy blog. He gets experts like real forensic scientists who are writers to tell you how to write about forensic science. He gets scientists, he gets people who are like experts in horsemanship to tell you about how to write about horses. Absolutely fantastic page. I really think it's really a unique page. I've written a couple articles for him, one on like how to do easy gravity calculations for sci-fi books. So check it out, you're gonna love it. Also be sure to pitch your book to elementary and middle school students. They speak their mind. If there's something that feels hokey about it, they'll let you know, and you'll definitely need to fix it for a general audience. Again, these are being recorded, so you can come back and you can review this list later for suggestions on doing research. You don't have to write everything down. So step number 3, now that you've got them to care about your character, now that you've demonstrated your credibility as a writer, they're ready to go on a journey with you. We love to go on journeys with the main characters. And these main characters, they go through a series of emotions, okay? The story does not have to, a story could take place in a single room, but every story is a sequence of emotions. And what the alternative to that is a lot of times we get as beta readers, we get these stories where, you know, the main character goes to school for the first day and she goes to first period and she goes to second period and she goes to third period and she goes to lunch and she goes to fourth, and you're just like, please let it end, make it stop, because these actions, even though they somewhat foreshadow what's happening, they're missing the whole point of a novel. A novel is not a sequence of events, it's a sequence of emotions. So the way you fix this, you go back and you say, okay, what is the most important emotion that this person is going to experience their first day at school? And what is the scene that tells that story most compellingly? And you delete every single other thing from the novel. You only keep the scenes with the compelling emotions, highs, lows, and things that immediately foreshadow something that comes in the chapter ahead of it. So this is the key then to fixing those problems with stories that read like travelogues. It's a sequence of emotions, not a sequence of events. So step number 4, this is where we really separate the sheep from the goats. Your job as a writer, our job as writers, is to boldly go where no one has gone before. The thing that makes us unique, like great painters, is that we can envision something so completely, so fully, and put it down that we're able to stretch and expand our readers' view of the world. This can be done a lot of different ways. One of the ways that's really compelling is to create character insights. There are moments in your story where your character realizes something likely that the audience hasn't realized yet, or maybe that they have. And when the character realizes that, their whole worldview changes, and ours changes with them. I listed a couple examples here on the slide. Consequences in your stories should be terrifying. They're going to make us rethink our deepest desires. Think about the movie Sphere or Jurassic Park, where you want to have the ability to bring back dinosaurs, or maybe not. You want to be able to have anything you wish for, or maybe not. When I think about the difference between literature and novels, the one thing that comes to mind is that literature changes who I am. When I read that book, I'm not the same person as when I finish that book. And for me, if you're able to write a story that changes the way I view the world, that changes the way I think about the way I interact with the world, you're writing literature. Great examples: To Kill a Mockingbird, the play 12 Angry Men, and almost anything by Charles Dickens. When you read that book, you are a different person when you're done. So learn from the masters how to do that. Some of that early civil rights era literature, and also from the masters Asimov and Bradbury, the early sci-fi guys. What did they do? Well, Asimov didn't just make robots smart; he made them smarter than humans. Bradbury didn't just give the government power; he gave it all power, right? So we're going to reason to extremes. We're going to explore the limits of a particular idea. And by doing that, we expand the minds of our readers. I love this picture from Doctor Who. Okay, so Doctor Who is a Time Lord. He travels backwards in time. He lives his life sort of backwards. And his love is River Song. And she's a time traveler, but she moves forward in time. And there comes this foreshadowed event where he kisses her and she reacts very strangely, as if they've never done this before. And then he realizes they haven't. Because for him, this is their first kiss. But yet, because he's moving backwards in time, it's the last kiss. It's the last time he will ever kiss her. And it's this absolutely heart-wrenching moment. The scene takes 20 seconds, but it's that powerful because the writers thought deeply about the consequences of what it would mean to be moving backwards in time. And then they revealed that to us, the readers, and sort of blew our minds. So this is a great way. This is a great way to do that. Lastly, okay, so now we've taken our readers on this emotional journey of highs and lows and twists and turns and things they never expected, and we've blown their mind, and we're coming around that last bend on the roller coaster. What do they feel? What do they feel? That's what we want to resolve for them in the last chapter of the book. And just like Harry has this sit-down talk with Dumbledore to help him realize what he's learned about what he's felt, we need to take time as a writer to help resolve clearly in the minds of our readers what it is that they felt, so that when they walk away from that book, they know and they remember. So it's a great thing to be able to ask your beta readers, what was the message of the story at the end? And if they can say it succinctly in one line, you've done it well. Otherwise, you need to rewrite your last chapter. I love this picture of Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. He's an android, and he is trying to be human, but he can't. He's not human. The cool thing about that is that in every episode, Data learns something about what it means to be human, but it's not just him. We are learning it with him. That's the compelling thing about writing about aliens or anything else. It's that whatever it is, every aspect of your story is like a mirror that reflects back on us and teaches us more about who we are. And that's our goal in the last chapter of the book. So the world that we build is going to act like a mirror and reflect back some aspect of humanity. It's either going to scare us or make us feel great. So I want to touch briefly before we finish up on what's the difference between something that's cliche and something that's archetypal, something that resonates with the core of humanity. As an example, I want to use Star Trek. So Star Trek, we don't watch it because we like space. We watch it because we love the human drama that takes place on Star Trek. It's like watching Disney's Inside Out, where you have all these characters inside someone's brain that are doing different things. They're painted in these bold brush strokes, very, very saturated colors. Inside of every one of us is to heck with the rules, I'm going to do it the way I want to, Kirk. And there's a logical Spock who wants to reason things out. And there's sort of a snarky Bones who wants to, make remarks, but maybe we don't in Sunday school, whatever. And so when we watch the Starship Enterprise, we are watching the interaction on that bridge is like what goes on inside of our own minds. And that's why it resonates so strongly with us. High fantasy can be the same way. Very compelling when the dwarf who's irreverent is making us wish that we could be that way. Or the elf who's noble and looks at the long term and things beyond the lives of mere human mortals, makes us want to be that way. your archetypes are they're going to be like these tuning forks that when you strike them, they resonate in the hearts of your readers. One of the things that makes the most successful books so successful is the clarity with which the writers can express the emotions of the main character. I've listed 3 examples here: Harry Potter, Bella Swan, and Ender Wiggin, from some of 3 of the most successful books of all time. These characters have the ability to resonate with us, not because they're the chosen one, but because they're trying to find their place in the world, right? So the tip then is for us to try to resonate with the universal by painting in these bold, saturated brushstrokes, these clearly resolved colors, painting them in such a way that they can be resolved as such. And then remembering that the aliens, the new races, the new locations, all these new things that we do, whether it's a new civilization, a new high school, we're going to use those as mirrors to teach ourselves more about what it means to be human. So here's my checklist. This was you should come back and watch, print this one off and put it next to yourself. So when you finish your manuscript, you go back and you check. Chapter 1, what's your job? You got to make me care about your main character before you do any of your world buildings. Chapter 2, you've got to convince me that you have done your homework as a writer and that you're not going to sell me stuff on the cheap, that you're going to give it a full-fleshed motivation, that you're going to stretch my mind, you're going to give me that brain candy. I'm just going to tingle as I read that story, because you're going to wow me so much with the cleverness of the way you've introduced the plot elements. The journey is going to be a journey of emotion, not a travelogue. You're going to blow my mind. You're going to make me cry. And then at the end of that book, I am going to know what it was that I learned from your story. So we're finishing up here right on time. I want to thank you guys for participating. Again, my name is Dan Allen. I'm a scientist, and I am at your disposal. You can go to my website. You can send me an email. Let's say you want to learn more about relativity. I'll do a short video. I'll put it up on my YouTube channel with my other videos there about quantum mechanics or the other fun things that I explain. I have great analogies. I can explain it to you, I promise. So use me as a resource. I can help you out. Check out my book, Fall of the Dragon Prince, coming out this fall from Jollyfish Press. It's big. It's epic. It's YA. New adult. It's got 5 different realms. These heirs of the emperor have to come together and save the kingdom as they find out who they are. It's lots of fun. I've got a science fiction series that's starting next year. It's really fun for young adults. It's got pages of spreadsheet calculations in that one. If you love sci-fi, you're gonna like that one. And again, reach out to me on social media, Twitter or on Facebook, and I will talk with you guys later. See you guys in 10 minutes for the second half of this talk, which is Apocalypse 101. We're going to be talking about how to write really, really compelling tragedies, how to get to that low point in your story. And in particular, we're going to address the question of how you make a story that's dragging in the middle more exciting. So join us in 10 minutes for that one. I'm going to sign out. Let's carry on the conversation on the chat lines.